Hey, I want to read you this book, Teammates, because yesterday was Jackie Robinson's birthday, and Jackie Robinson was the first black player who was allowed to play in Major League Baseball. Now, what you may not know is there was a whole league of baseball players. It was called the Negro Leagues, where there were African American black baseball players who were incredible, who were playing baseball, but they weren't allowed to play in the major leagues, which is like the professional baseball league. But Jackie Robinson was the first one who was allowed, and he changed things because he was a brilliant player and a brilliant person, and it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that black players weren't allowed to play. So this one's called Teammates, and it's called How Two Men Changed the Face of Baseball. And this is Jackie Robinson, and this is Pee Wee Reese. And Pee Wee Reese and Jackie Robinson were teammates on the same team. Teammates. Written by Peter Golenbach, designed and illustrated by Paul Bacon. Once upon a time in America, when automobiles were black and looked like tanks, and laundry was white and hung on clotheslines to dry, there were two wonderful baseball leagues that no longer exist. They were called the Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues had extraordinary players, and adoring fans came to see them wherever they played. They were heroes. But players in the Negro Leagues didn't make much money, and their lives on the road were hard. Laws against segregation did not exist in the 1940s, and we've learned that segregation is when you separate people based on race. Like you say, the people who are black have to sit in the back of the bus, the people who are not black, who are white, can sit in the front of the bus, and segregation is not fair. Laws against segregation did not exist in the 1940s. In many places in this country, black people were not allowed to go to the same schools and churches as white people. They couldn't sit in the front of a bus or a trolley car. They couldn't drink from the same drinking fountains that white people drank from. Back then, many hotels did not rent rooms to black people, so the Negro League players slept in their cars. Many towns had no restaurants that would serve them, so they often had to eat meals that they could buy and carry with them. And this water fountain says white only. So the baseball players in the Negro Leagues were not treated fairly. Nope. Life was very different for the players in the major leagues. They were the leagues for white players. Compared to the Negro League players, white players, they were paid very well. They stayed in good hotels and they ate in very fine restaurants. Their pictures were put on baseball cards, and the best players became famous all over the world. Joe DiMaggio, Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Lou Gehrig. Many Americans knew that racial prejudice was wrong. Racial prejudice is when you treat people unfairly because of their race. But few Americans dared to challenge openly the way things were. And many people were apathetic about racial problems. Apathetic means they didn't care. They didn't really care about the racial problems. Some feared, especially people who were white. There were a lot of apathetic people who were white. Some people feared that it could be dangerous to object or say things against racism. Vigilante groups like the Ku Klux Klan reacted violently against those who tried to change the way blacks were treated. The general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team was a man by the name of Branch Rickey. He was not afraid of change. He wanted to treat the Dodger fans to the best players he could find, regardless of the color of their skin. He thought segregation was unfair, and he wanted to give everyone, regardless of race or creed, that means what you believe in, he wanted to give everyone an opportunity to compete equally on ball fields across America. To do this, the Dodgers needed one special man. Branch Rickey launched a search for him. He was looking for a star player in the Negro Leagues who would be able to compete successfully despite threats on his life or attempts to hurt or injure him. He would have to possess the self-control not to fight back when opposing players tried to intimidate or hurt him. If this man disgraced himself on the field, Rickey knew his opponents would use it as an excuse to keep blacks out of Major League Baseball for many more years. Rickey thought that Jackie Robinson might be just the man. Man, that's not fair. Not fair to expect the black player not to get upset when other people are, threatening him, saying mean things. That's just not right. Jackie Robinson rode the train to Brooklyn to meet Mr. Rickey. When Mr. Rickey told him, "I want a man with the courage not to fight back," Jackie Robinson replied, "If you take this gamble, I will do my best to perform." They shook hands. Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson were starting on what would be known in history as the Great Experiment. Number 42. That was Jackie Robinson's jersey number. At spring training with the Dodgers, Jackie was mobbed by black people, young and old, as if he were a savior. He was the first black player to try out for a major league team. If he succeeded, they knew that others would follow. Initially, life with the Dodgers was for Jackie a series of humiliations. The players on his team who came from the South, men who had been taught to avoid black people since childhood, moved to another table whenever he sat down next to them. Many opposing players, that means on the opposite team, many opposing players were cruel to him, calling him nasty names from their dugouts. The dugouts is where they sit during a baseball game. A few players tried to hurt him with their spiked shoes or their cleats. Pitchers aimed at his head when they were throwing the ball, and he received threats on his life both from individuals and from organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. So wrong. All of that, not right. Despite all the difficulties, Jackie Robinson did not give up. He made the Brooklyn Dodgers team. And here's a picture of the Brooklyn Dodgers team. And here's Jackie Robinson. He made the team. But making the Dodgers was only the beginning Jackie had to face. Yeah, he had to face abuse and hostility throughout the season, from April through September. His worst pain was inside. Often, he felt very alone. On the road, he had to live by himself because only the white players were allowed in the hotels in towns where the team played. The whole time, Pee Wee Reese, the Dodger shortstop, was growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. The whole time he grew up, he had rarely even seen a black person, unless it was in the back of the bus. Most of his friends and relatives hated the idea of him playing on the same field as a black man. In addition, Pee Wee Reese had more to lose than the other players when Jackie joined the team. Jackie had been a shortstop, and everyone thought that Jackie would take Pee Wee's job. Lesser men might have felt anger toward Jackie, but Pee Wee was different. He told himself, if he's good enough to take my job, he deserves it. When his Southern teammates circulated a petition, that's like a letter, to throw Jackie off the team and they asked him to sign it, Pee Wee responded, "I don't care if this man is black, blue, striped," and he refused to sign. "He can play and he can help us win," he told the others. That's what counts. This is Crosley Field. Very early in the season, the Dodgers traveled west to Ohio to play the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati is near Pee Wee's hometown of Louisville. So Ohio, there's Cincinnati in Ohio. Kentucky, there's Louisville in Kentucky, and Indiana. The Reds played in a small ballpark where the fans sat close to the field. The players could almost feel the breath of the fans on the backs of their necks. Many who came that day screamed terrible, hateful things at Jackie when the Dodgers were on the field. More than anything else, Pee Wee Reese believed in doing what was right. When he heard the fans yelling at Jackie, Pee Wee decided to take a stand. With his head high, Pee Wee walked directly from his shortstop position to where Jackie was playing first base. The taunts and shouting of the fans were ringing in Pee Wee's ears, and it made him sad. It saddened him because he knew it could have been his friends and neighbors. Pee Wee's legs felt heavy, but he knew what he had to do. As he walked toward Jackie, wearing the gray Dodger uniform, he looked into his teammates' bold, pained eyes. The first baseman had done nothing to provoke the hostility. He had done nothing to make these fans mad, except that he sought to be treated as an equal. Jackie was grim with anger. Grim is kind of like down and upset. Pee Wee smiled broadly as he reached Jackie, and Jackie smiled back. Stopping beside Jackie, Pee Wee put his arm around Jackie's shoulders. An audible gasp rose up from the crowd when they saw what Pee Wee had done. Then there was silence. Outlined on a sea of green grass stood these two great athletes, these two great ball players, one black, one white, both wearing the same team uniform. "I am standing by him," Pee Wee Reese said to the world. "This man is my teammate." And that's Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese. And that's the story of teammates, how two men changed the face of baseball.